Hi guys, you're with me Kevin from gardening.co.za, and today I'm super excited because we get to set up our new 3x2x2 meter greenhouses that we've got available on our site. These are the perfect polytunnels to use for growing in South African conditions. So as you can see, they come in kit form, so we're going to open this up and set it up to show you guys how easy it is. Top tip from me, before you get started, there's a few items that you're going to need to make your setup a lot easier. First thing I recommend is a good quality ratchet set. Or if you've got one of those electronic drill bits with all your little ratchet sets on it, that'll make your life a lot easier. Good idea to have a shifting spanner as well as a Leatherman or knife just to help cut through everything in the box as you open everything up. And it's a really good idea just to have a few containers for all the nuts and bolts just to separate all of those out. So I've got all of those prepped and ready, but let's open up the box to see what's going on inside. So open it up. You can see I have my polytunnel cover, so we'll put this guy out the way. I have a whole bunch of bits and pieces. I got my wires and my screws and my nuts. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put these into one of the containers to keep them safe. So there was an Allen key that came flying out over there, or a peg. I'm just going to put that aside. We'll figure that out in a while. And on the inside we have all of our different poles. So I've got a whole bunch of different lengths and bends, and they're all labeled number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you would follow that with your instructions, which are at the bottom. But one thing I can advise you guys to do before you even start setting everything up is just take each of these poles out and just double check the top and the bottom. You'll see that there's a smaller end or a male end and then a wider end and a female end, and just check every single one of them to check that they're not damaged or crimped or damaged in any way, because that can sometimes happen in transport. And the last thing you'd want to be doing is setting up your greenhouse and you get halfway through and you realize that one of the ports doesn't fit. So just double check all of that before you get started. So I'm going to do that for you now. I'm just going to open all of these up, lay it all out nicely, so it'll make it a lot easier for me to start setting this up. So what I've found works really well is to take the instructions and to lay all the poles out more or less where they're going to go. So yeah, I'm going to lay down my base section, and then I'm going to assemble my roof or arch sections and just put them out the back, and then I'll set out my side sections as well, and then I can start to erect it, and it'll make it a lot easier as opposed to going back to keep finding the parts in the boxes. So I'm going to get right onto that. I'm going to move all of this out the way and start laying it out. Right, now you can see I've laid out all the parts that I need. I've been checking the instructions. I've got my bolts over there. So now I'm going to start putting it together. So start bolting it all together. We will start to build the frame. Right, I've now got my whole base set up. I've attached the side struts. The only challenging thing I found was just the corners. That's a little bit finicky to get your fingers in. Might help if you've got two people, but I managed to do this easily enough by myself. I'm now going to start setting up the side walls and then the roof. So let's get into that. So something I've just noticed now, I've been putting the greenhouse together, is one of these connection sections, the female section of one of the arches, is just ever so slightly bent out of shape. So I could send this back to the manufacturer, but all that's really going to do is it's going to delay my setup process. This does sometimes happen. An easy way to solve this is literally just to grab your pliers and just crimp it back into shape, because this could have just got knocked for whatever reason. So let's give that a quick little crimp there with my spanner. And then I'm pretty sure this is going to fit in 100%. Just crimp that out. And let's see if we can get that to fit now. There we go, that's now in there. Nice and tight, but I've got that sorted. So let's carry on with the setup. Now that we've got the frame all assembled and nicely tightened, I'm going to just stick on the end caps. So on the inside here, I have all these plastic caps to put on the insides of the screws, as well as some blanking plugs which we're going to stick on at the open ends. Just a top tip from me: when you guys are assembling, when you assemble the greenhouse, it's very important when you're dealing with your screw and your nut that you put the screw side on the outside and you put the nut on the inside, so the spike is sticking towards the inside. Otherwise that's going to tear the poly cover. And also the frame, the lengthways frame, needs to be on the inside with the hoops on the outside. That'll make it a lot easier for you. So I'm going to pop these on, and then we're going to open up the polytunnel itself, readjust this frame to it's in the position we want it, and we can start to finish it off. So as you can see, that was easy enough to do all by myself. I managed to assemble the frame as well as open up the polytunnel and pull it over the frame itself and secure it quite nicely. Top tip from me is when you're pulling the polytunnel over, it's best to open the doors just to allow more space so you can pull it over, and then you can zip the doors closed just to give it a nice tight fit, and then you can go on the inside, and there's a number of ties where you can tie the polytunnel onto the frame itself. You'll see that we have a skirt around the outside here. What we recommend is that you bury these. So you trench it out and bury these in at least 5 to 10 centimeters of earth, and that's going to give you a proper secure fitting of the greenhouse itself, so it doesn't blow away in a strong gust of wind. It'll also give it a lot more rigidity and support. The greenhouse polytunnels do come with this tent string and little tent pegs that you can attach onto these little side sections over here, these little eyelets. However, for South African conditions, we don't recommend that, because if you get really strong gusts of wind, these aren't going to help you at all. It's best to bury. And we've also found that when we've used these tent pegs on the side, we tend to trip over them ourselves, and so do the dogs, and the dogs are running around our garden as well. So we don't recommend these. Best thing to do is to trench this in. If you're planning to put this on a slab or on a paved area, it's very important that you do weigh these down. So these little skirts, you need to put heavy weights on them. However, that said, we don't recommend putting these onto slabs or on paved areas unless it's in a very protected area, because if you get a gust of wind, no matter how much weight you put on these are prone to be blown away. So always to recommend put it in the earth where you can trench it down. The polytunnel is a 40% UV protected, so it will handle South African sun, and it reduces the amount of UV going into the plants as well, which helps care for your seedlings and everything else through winter. This is quite warm in the winter time as well, and it can regulate the temperature during summertime, so we find that these work super well for our seedlings as well as all our other plants before we plant them out into the gardens themselves. So now we're going to have a look inside so I can show you the frames and give you an idea of what we're going to do. Right, so let's zip open our doors and have a look inside. I can roll the door up, and we've got some clips at the top just so we can keep the door out of the way. Roll that up, and then there's a clip on the inside where I can just clip the doors open. And there's a door on the back side as well, which we can open up to allow for airflow. You can also hang shade netting on the front and the back if you want to keep birds and critters out as well. But I can really feel that this is nice and warm. The frame itself is made of a galvanized material, so it is rust resistant, and the polytunnel itself will last a good number of years in South African conditions. Replacement covers are available as well. If it does get heavily damaged by wind or hail or etc., we can arrange replacement covers for you too. And these greenhouses are modular kits, so you can line up 2 or 3 of them next to each other, or you can lay it out lengthways and let you run the doors door to door. Then you can separate off the greenhouses. If you get a mite or an aphid infestation in one section, you can literally quarantine off one section of your greenhouse. What we find works quite well is to set up the greenhouses in a line, which we have done at the back of our property, but we separate them by 1.5 to 2 meters, and you walk from greenhouse to greenhouse, and we put pollinating flowers, so just or pollinating attraction flowers on the outside, just to bring the bees in to help with whatever we're planting in there. So there is our review of our 3 3 by 2 meter, 2 meter greenhouses that work really well. We're just going to start sinking this in a short while as soon as one of my groundskeepers are available to help me, and then we're going to start moving our seedlings in. And you can just stay tuned to our YouTube channel. Also check out all our Facebook streams, and we'll show you pictures of this greenhouse as we get it developed. So if you guys need to purchase one of these, you can go to our website gardening.co.za, and we can deliver these to you anywhere in the country. So let's snap over to some pictures of us setting this up, as well as a few of the things that we move in here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll speak to you next time.